Don't say anything yet. Not to anyone, not even casually, because the moment you speak too soon, you shift something that is still forming around you. This isn't about fear or secrecy in a negative way. It's about timing. And right now, your timing is more sensitive than you realize. There are moments where silence becomes more powerful than action, and this is one of those moments. Archangel Michael is often associated with protection, not just from obvious harm, but from premature exposure. Revealing things before they are ready can change how they unfold. And that's exactly why you're being guided to pause right now. You might feel the urge to share something, to talk about what you're planning, what you're sensing, or what you believe is coming next. That urge feels natural, especially when something important is approaching. But not everyone around you is meant to understand it at this stage. Some people interpret things based on their own limitations, their own doubts, or their own perspective. And when something is still developing, that kind of influence can create confusion where there should be clarity. That's why this moment matters, because what's coming toward you doesn't need validation from others yet. It needs space. There is something closer than you think, something that is already beginning to take shape, even if it hasn't fully appeared. And the only reason you're being shown this now is so you don't interfere with it unintentionally. So stay with this, stay quiet for now, and don't feel pressured to explain or reveal anything before it's fully ready. Because what's unfolding next is not meant to be shared, it's meant to be protected. What you've been experiencing lately hasn't just been random distance or silence. It's been a shift in how you relate to the people around you. You may have noticed that you've started speaking less, sharing less, or even pulling back without fully understanding why. Conversations that once felt natural now feel unnecessary, and things you would normally explain, you now keep to yourself. That change didn't come out of nowhere. It came from a growing awareness that not everyone around you is meant to be part of what's unfolding next in your life. And that realization can feel uncomfortable at first, because it makes you question who truly understands you and who doesn't. There may have been moments where you tried to express your thoughts, your plans, or even your intuition about what's coming. And instead of feeling supported, you felt misunderstood or dismissed. Maybe people didn't take you seriously, or maybe they responded with doubt, hesitation, or even subtle negativity. Those reactions don't always come from bad intentions, but they still have an effect. They make you second-guess yourself, they slow down your clarity, and they introduce noise into something that requires focus. Over time, you start to recognize that not every space is the right space to speak freely, especially when something important is still developing. This is why silence has started to feel different for you. It's no longer just about holding back, it's about protecting your direction. When something is still forming, it's more sensitive to outside influence. Opinions, doubts, and even casual comments can shift how you see things, even if you don't realize it immediately. That's why you've been guided in a subtle way to observe more and speak less. Not because you're being isolated, but because you're being refined. You're learning the difference between who listens and who truly understands, between who supports your growth and who unintentionally disrupts it. You may also notice that your trust has become more selective. You're no longer as open as you used to be, and that might feel unfamiliar. But that selectiveness is not a weakness, it's awareness. It means you're no longer placing your thoughts and plans in environments that don't align with them. And that awareness is essential right now, because what's coming next requires a level of focus that can't be maintained if you're constantly explaining yourself to the wrong people. Even the feeling of being slightly separate from others at times is part of this process. It's not permanent, and it's not meant to make you feel disconnected. It's meant to create space. Space where your ideas can develop without interference, where your clarity can strengthen without being questioned, and where your direction can become more defined before it's exposed. Because once something becomes visible to others, it also becomes influenced by them. And right now, influence is exactly what needs to be limited. So what you've been experiencing is not distance for no reason. It's preparation. Preparation that is teaching you when to speak and when to stay silent, when to share and when to hold back. And as this awareness grows, you'll begin to understand that not everyone is meant to know what you're building. At least not yet, and this is where what's coming toward you becomes more real, but still not something that should be exposed too early. Because the nature of this shift requires protection before it becomes visible. There is something forming in your life right now that carries weight, something that is not meant to stay small or unnoticed, but it is still in a stage where it needs to develop without interference. That's why the silence you've been guided into is not accidental. It's directly connected to what is approaching. God is often described as working in ways that are not immediately obvious, allowing things to grow in private before they are revealed in public. And that's exactly the phase you are in right now. What's important to understand is that not everything is meant to be shared while it's still forming. When something is new, when it's still taking shape, it's more sensitive to outside influence. Even small doubts, questions, or opinions from others can create hesitation or distraction that slows down the process. That's why what's coming toward you feels quiet right now. It's not fully visible, it's not fully defined, but it's there. And the more you allow it to develop without exposing it too soon, the stronger and clearer it becomes. You may already feel that something is shifting, even if you can't fully explain what it is. It might show up as a sense of anticipation, a feeling that something is about to change, or even a subtle confidence that wasn't there before. That feeling is not random. It's a signal that something is aligning, something that connects directly to your next phase. But alignment requires space. It requires focus. And most importantly, it requires that you don't dilute it by trying to explain it to people who are not in the same place as you. There's also a reason why not everyone around you is meant to understand this yet. People see things through their own experiences, their own limits, and their own expectations. And when something doesn't fit into their understanding, they respond in ways that can unintentionally create doubt. That's not because they want to hold you back. It's because they don't see what you see. And when something is still developing, that difference in perspective can become a distraction. That's why silence becomes protection. It keeps your focus clear and your direction steady. Even Archangel Michael is often associated with guarding what is important until the right moment of revelation. Not everything is meant to be revealed at once. Some things are meant to grow quietly until they are strong enough to stand on their own without being affected by outside influence. And what is forming around you now carries that same energy. It is not meant to be explained, justified, or questioned at this stage. It is meant to be developed. So this is not just about staying silent for the sake of secrecy. It's about understanding that what's coming needs time to take shape in the right way. Because once it becomes visible, once it fully arrives, it will speak for itself. And at that point, you won't need to explain anything to anyone. But right now, your role is not to reveal, it's to protect. And this is where the real risk begins, not because something negative is coming, but because this is the exact point where most people unknowingly interfere with their own progress. When something valuable is forming, there's a natural urge to talk about it, to share it, to get feedback or validation. It feels almost automatic, like you need to release the pressure by letting someone else in on it. But this is the moment where that instinct can work against you. Because once you start speaking too early, you invite perspectives that were never meant to shape what you're building. What happens when you share something before it's ready is subtle, but powerful. The moment you explain your plans or your direction, it stops being something that exists clearly within you and starts becoming something that is influenced by how others respond to it. Even a small reaction, a question, a doubt, a hesitation, can plant uncertainty where there was once clarity. And that uncertainty doesn't always feel obvious. It can show up as hesitation, overthinking, or second-guessing decisions that originally felt right. That's how something strong begins to weaken, not because it wasn't meant for you, but because it was exposed before it was fully formed. You also have to understand that not everyone processes information the same way you do. Some people respond based on fear, some based on limitation, and some based on what they've personally experienced. So when you share something that is still developing, they naturally filter it through their own perspective. And if their perspective is smaller than what you're stepping into, their reaction can unintentionally shrink your vision. That's why silence is not about hiding. It's about keeping your vision intact until it becomes strong enough to stand on its own. There's also an energy to this that most people overlook. When something is new and not fully established, it is more sensitive to influence. Attention from others, especially mixed or uncertain attention, can disrupt the focus you need to keep things moving in the right direction. That's why you may have already felt a quiet pull to keep certain things to yourself, even without fully understanding why. That instinct is not random, it's guidance. It's helping you maintain the clarity that is required at this stage. Archangel Michael is often associated with guarding and protecting what is valuable until the right moment of exposure. And that protection doesn't always come from removing threats. It often comes from limiting access. Not everyone needs to know what you're doing right now. Not everyone needs to understand your next move. Because the more people involved too early, the more complex and unstable the situation becomes. This is why timing matters not just in action, but in communication. Speaking at the wrong time can have the same effect as acting at the wrong time. It shifts outcomes, delays progress, and introduces unnecessary resistance. But when you hold back, when you allow things to develop without outside interference, you give them the space to become solid. And once something is solid, it no longer depends on how others respond to it. So this is the moment where you need to be intentional. Not reactive, not impulsive, but aware. You don't need to explain yourself right now. You don't need to prove anything. What you're building does not require immediate validation. It requires protection. And the way you protect it is simple, but not always easy. You stay silent until it's ready to be seen. And now this is where everything begins to prove itself, not through words, not through explanation, but through results that no longer need to be hidden. Because the silence you've been holding is not meant to last forever. It's meant to carry you to a point where what you've been protecting becomes strong enough to stand on its own without being affected by outside influence. And when that moment arrives, you won't feel the need to explain anything, because what's unfolding in your life will speak clearly without effort. What you need to understand is that silence is not the end of the process. It's the bridge to something more visible. Right now, you've been in a phase where things are forming quietly, where progress is happening beneath the surface. But soon, that progress begins to show. Not all at once, but in ways that are noticeable enough that others begin to see the difference. And that's when the dynamic changes, because once something becomes visible and stable, it no longer carries the same level of sensitivity it had before. God is often described as bringing things into the light only after they are fully prepared, not before. And that's exactly what you're approaching now. What was once private will begin to become public in the right way at the right time. And when that happens, it won't be something you have to defend or justify. It will be something that stands on its own, something that makes sense without explanation. You may even notice that the same people who wouldn't have understood before begin to see things differently once the results are clear. That's the nature of timing. People often understand outcomes more easily than processes. And that's why you were never meant to share everything too early, because it would have only created confusion. But once everything aligns and becomes visible, that confusion disappears on its own. There's also a shift happening within you as this unfolds. The need for validation fades. The urge to explain yourself becomes less important. You begin to move with more confidence. Not because you're trying to prove something, but because you know where you stand. And that internal shift is just as important as the external results, because it changes how you carry yourself moving forward. You're no longer reacting to others. You're moving in alignment with what you've already built. Even Archangel Michael is often associated not just with protection, but with revelation at the right time. Protection comes first, then exposure. And that sequence matters, because without protection, what is revealed can be weakened. But with protection, what is revealed becomes undeniable. And that's the stage you're moving into now. So this is your final reminder. What you're doing right now matters more than it seems. The silence, the restraint, the awareness, it's all part of something that is about to become visible in a way that doesn't require approval from anyone else. And when that moment comes, you'll understand why you were guided to hold back, why you were told not to share too soon, and why not everyone around you needed to know. Because in the end, it's not about who heard about it first, it's about what becomes real. And what's about to become real in your life will not need words to prove it.